What's up everybody? Today I come to you with a brand new microsite I built to showcase the features of Eleventy on CloudCannon specifically. Now CloudCannon is a great get-back to CMS that will really get you up and running fast to allow non-technical editors to come in and edit data on your site and see it deployed live without any developer intervention. About 2 weeks ago I put up this post on Mastodon that sort of asked for instrumental web development blog posts that folks have in their library, influential links that they remember that really changed how they build for the web. And I collected those and built a new microsite out of it. So if you're interested in checking out the source code for this project, you can find it on my GitHub. And if you want to see a local demo, you can check it out here. Here it is running locally. Just a basic list of URLs. We have the title of the post, a little screenshot to the right, the favicon showing here, the author name, and then the year that it was posted. Now, one of the additional features that we have built in here is an RSS feed. When we put a new URL on this page, you can subscribe to that feed. And to host this microsite on CloudCannon, we're going to go into the CloudCannon app. We're going to hit Add New Site, and we'll build with our own files. Of course, we want to use the same name that we have for the repo here. So we'll put that in, and we'll source it from GitHub. And we'll run it off the main branch. Now CloudCannon is going out and downloading those files from GitHub and syncing them into CloudCannon. One of the cool things about CloudCannon is that it's smart enough to know that we have an Eleventy configuration file in our project, but we also have deep Eleventy integration here in the UI of CloudCannon. So CloudCannon knows what configuration options, what command line flags are available to Eleventy, and it has a nice little GUI to allow you to edit those. So if you want to customize your Eleventy build, you can do that here. But we just want to use the defaults here, so we're going to move forward. Now CloudCannon is building our project, and that's it. And if we click this live site preview link, we can get access to the full production URL that's available live for anyone to look at, and we can share it with clients or our colleagues as needed. And the cool thing here is that we really have got a complete website up and running without any CloudCannon specific configuration in our repository. We just had to go through a couple of setup steps in the GUI, and we're good to go. And if we look on the CloudCannon dashboard, we can see that there's a side panel here. And CloudCannon has automatically detected the pages that are on our site. We have a single page website. And if we click through, we can see a couple of different editing options here as well. So on the left panel, we have a data editor. A data editor really represents the front matter data that's in this specific template file. So if we go back to our local code editor, we can see that the same front matter, the same key values are represented here in the front matter of the template as well. And on the right here, we have what's known as the visual editor. Now we'll kind of go into this a little bit later, but you can actually add live content editing right into the CloudCannon interface. And I think that's very powerful as well. But it does require a little bit extra configuration, so we'll go into that later. And the other sort of amazing thing here is that CloudCannon has automatic collection detection. So if we click to our sites data, you can see there's a bunch of different entries here, each one of these representing a different file in our project. So we go back to our editor, you can see on the side panel here that we have a source sites folder, and each one of these files represents an individual entry on our microsite. So each file here has a URL, an author, a title, and a blog post date. And it's important that each of these are separate files just to minimize the number of conflicts that could happen in the project. So I have each of one of these as a separate file, and Eleventy will collate those together into the final product. And again, CloudCannon for free with no configuration at all detected this for me, and it gives me an editing interface. So just like we saw on the homepage, we have the data editor here on the left, and that's the front matter for this specific file. We have a bunch of options here. And then on the right, we have what's known as the markdown or content editor. Now this isn't the visual editor because it's a markdown file, but if these files had content, which they don't, it would show up here. And I'll show you how to customize that as well. But again, I think there's an incredible power in the automatic collection detection feature of CloudCannon. It really gives you an editing experience for free with 0 CloudCannon configuration, which again is kind of incredible, right? CloudCannon detected what we needed to edit, and I have a fully featured editing experience right out of the box. Now let's say hypothetically we wanted to add a new entry to this project. How would we go about doing that? And remember, we haven't added any CloudCannon specific configuration. And just as a random example from the internet, I'll just go out to this website, which is a pretty good website, and find their most popular post, and we'll add it to this project. And again, there's an add site button with 0 CloudCannon specific configuration. I feel like that is the theme of this project. I haven't added any CloudCannon things yet. So the interesting thing here is that when you create a new entry, when we haven't set up any configuration, it will actually use an entry from the same directory. So in this case, we've reused the Atomic Web Design entry as a blueprint for our new file. And we'll just edit it with the new information here. And we can hit the Save button. So what this will do is actually create a new file in our sites directory with our new URL. Hooray, there it is. So just in going through this process, we haven't added any CloudCannon specific stuff, but I do think we should now dive into adding some CloudCannon specific configuration. So let's go back to our editor. I have my CloudCannon specific file here at cloudcannon.config.yaml, and one of the things that I want to do is customize the inputs that show. Now these are global options for our data properties. I want to customize the date editor. So just as an example, let's go back out to this one. This editing experience has a date and a time. I just want to show a date. I don't think the time is really relevant here. We don't need that level of granularity. So CloudCannon, when it detects a property that has the name date, assigns a date time to it. And we can actually reassign that to just be a date and hide the time editor. We can add a label and a little comment that will show on the editor as well. The other thing I want to do is hide the layout. I don't want on our homepage anyone to edit the Eleventy layout file that gets generated here. And if we go back into our data editor for this entry specifically, we can see that the date time is now just a date field, which is great. And if we go back to our homepage, we can see that there is now no layout text input here, because again, we don't want folks to edit that. So now we have CloudCannon specific configuration. What else can we do? So if we open up our CloudCannon configuration file, we see that we can actually customize the collection detection configuration built into CloudCannon. So we can use our collections config object. We can modify our sites collection. We can add a neat icon inside the icon editor, and those icons come from material design. We can control the preview that shows up in the editor as well. And we can also configure the type of editing experience we want from the file. So let's check in those changes and see how they are reflected in the CloudCannon CMS. So now that we bring up our sites collection in the CloudCannon CMS, we can see that the icon has changed to a link icon. We added just an empty preview, and now also the default editor is now just the data editor. We don't show any content. The content for these files is irrelevant. So when you click through to any file here, you'll get the data editor as the primary editing experience. So earlier we showed that when you add a new file to your project, it uses the existing content from an existing file in the sites folder. And I don't really think that's the best editing experience. So let's go ahead and go back in here and show how to make that better. And we can do that with something called a schema. So a schema sort of sets the blueprint for when a new file is created, what data to use as part of your add new file editing experience. And we can point to the schema inside of our CloudCannon configuration file. Inside of our schema file, it looks the same as any existing Markdown file does in our current project. We just have empty values or default values that show up here, and CloudCannon will use this when you're adding a new file to your project. So let's commit these changes and see how it looks in CloudCannon. All right, so we'll bring up CloudCannon again. We'll hit Add Site here. We get a nice authoring experience starting from scratch rather than pre-populated data, which I think is great. Now, one of the things that can help you so that you don't get lost in your CloudCannon YAML configuration or JSON or TOM or whatever format you're using for your configuration file, you can actually edit your configuration file in the CloudCannon interface. So if you go to your site settings, the general section, and hit editing, now this obeys the same rules as editing any file in your CloudCannon project. So you hit save and it commits it right back to the repository. Alright, I also wanted to go back here and show you a little bit of the visual editing features that I teed up from a little bit earlier in the video. The only thing you need to do to edit HTML content on your site is to add an editable class to the elements. So we'll go ahead and swap these out, and we'll add an editable class to the title. We'll add an editable class to this content section here, nestled right inside of our main element. And we have some in the footer as well. So let's go ahead and swap those out too. And we'll push those changes. All right, and if we go back to CloudCannon and look at our home page, we see now that we have editable content sections of our page. And we kind of have free reign when it comes to the HTML of this section specifically. So I could delete sections. I can add new content. Hello from Zach. And we had one in our footer as well. And if we save that, commit it right to our repo. And if we go to our production site, you can see those changes reflected right on the production site. Now there are more advanced live editing workflows for CloudCannon, and if you're interested in going down that road, it is a little bit more set up. You do get quite a bit more features built into that. So if you're interested in sort of going deeper on the live editing stuff in CloudCannon, I would recommend checking out Bookshop. Just for the purpose of this video, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible, but there's a lot more to cover here. Another sort of really great feature that's built into CloudCannon is that CloudCannon offers a proprietary link protocol. So you can actually add deep links inside of a project to the different editing portions of the CloudCannon CMS. And I'll show this on the homepage here. You can see the CloudCannon protocol here. It links to the collection. And we want sort of an edit link for each of our data files that's represented in our sites collection. And that's what this does. We're looping over the sites collection here, and we're just linking to that collection inside of CloudCannon. All right, now if we go back into CloudCannon and into the visual editor for our homepage, we now have edit links for each one of these individual entries that will deep link directly to the editor for our individual data files for the sites collection. And that's really powerful for allowing you to sort of customize the CloudCannon visual editor to your needs. So these entries aren't necessarily baked into the content file itself. They're being sourced from other files. So I wanted to deep link into the editor for that as well, right in the CloudCannon visual editor. So this is all well and great if I'm the only person working on the project, but I think that the real power comes here when you're working with multiple people on the same project. So we can do that with collaborators. So if we go into my project settings, down to the sharing section, there's a collaborators. I can hit add collaborator. I'll add my good friend Lexit, and we'll add them as a technical editor. Now if I open up a brand new incognito window and log in as my good friend Lexit, we don't encourage password sharing here, but just for the purposes of this demo, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, we see we get the same exact editing experience that we had in the primary editor as well. And another great option we have here for working with other folks is client sharing. Now this works great for agencies that have built a site for their own clients, and they want the client to be able to come in and edit the site themselves. Client sharing allows the same editing experience, but they do not need a CloudCannon account to edit the site. All you need to do is set up a custom password. Then you get a link that you can share with your clients. So I'll open up another incognito window, browse to the new site, and this has no CloudCannon credentials, no CloudCannon sessions active. And typing that password in also gives me full access to the CloudCannon editing experience. I can edit sites, I can do all of this just with one password that I've shared with my client. And lastly, I want to host this new site on a custom domain. So if I go to the hosting section of the settings, all I needed to do was in my domain name provider, change my name servers to the ones provided by CloudCannon, and I'm ready to go. Here it is, esif.dev. Check out the site, check out the source code, and let me know how it goes. And keep building for the web.